Gaza's been under total Israeli blockade since March the 2nd.
Expanding its blockade of the territory.
Israel's blockade on medical supplies.
The need for food, medicine and other supplies is desperate.
The UN says the entire humanitarian system is collapsing.
They're struggling to eat more than once every day or two.
The Israeli blockade on Gaza is pushing the most vulnerable people to the brink of starvation.
Starvation spreads throughout the enclave.
במשך חודשיים וחצי לא הכנסנו סיוע הומניטרי לרצועת עזה. זה יצר לחץ גדול מאוד על חמאס, וטוב שכך.
No electricity, no fuel, no food.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
What's happening now is not completely new. It is more violent, it is very present. But it is grounded on, sadly, many years that have increasingly dehumanized Palestinians, many years of practice and narrative.
After October 7th, Gaza fell under an unprecedented siege. But for its people, the blockade was nothing new.
Name me one other place in the entire world where you have such a large amount of people, over 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, who are blockaded in what could only be called a medieval siege, where Israel controlled who and what left the Gaza Strip and who and what entered into the Gaza Strip. There's no other comparable situation in the modern world.
The blockade imposed by Israel intensified after Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip in 2007. The territory was sealed off by land, air, and sea.
Gaza is not self-sufficient anyway in terms of food. You know, because of the 18-year blockade, fishermen haven't been able to go out to fish, and the fish is pretty much gone in that part of the sewage Mediterranean that's left to them. Because Israel has restricted with its peripheries, Palestinians getting close even to the borders of Gaza.
Israel severely restricted the movement of people and the flow of commercial goods in and out of the area.
If we go back before October 7th, particularly in the years since roughly 2012 up to 2023, economy in Gaza was flat on its back. Indeed, the annual per capita GDP among the population in Gaza was actually declining. The economy was getting worse. Jobs were getting scarcer. The ability to be able to buy food was diminishing. 70% of the population was apparently below the poverty line as set by the United Nations.
Operation Cast Lead launched in December 2008 and lasting 22 days. An assault that destroyed not only its targets, but also hopes. Farmlands, factories, homes, and schools. Everything that forms the heart of a nation was reduced to rubble. Since then, international human rights groups have described Gaza as an open-air prison.
It's cut off a lot of the agricultural land. They have no access to it. And then, of course, you've got polluted land, you've got polluted groundwater, you have no water for irrigation. The river that used to go through Gaza has been blocked. So even if you could get access to the land, you can't farm, which make Gazans almost 100% dependent on humanitarian aid coming into Gaza.
Imagine a place where no one can enter and no one can leave. Nothing crossed Gaza's borders without Israel's permission, not even aid.
And then you cut off the humanitarian aid. So this is not just a war, this is an intended policy of starvation of a population.
This amounted to collective punishment. Collective punishment is something that should be unknown in the modern world. Collective punishment is punishing the innocent for the crimes of the few.
In 2012, a document surfaced revealing that the Israeli military had calculated the minimum daily calorie intake for Gaza's population. The document alleged that milk consumption was overstated to 3 times the actual levels in Gaza, implying that aid could be reduced. It also stated that food aid could be cut by 20%.
So this is a calculated policy of starvation or controlled starvation, getting people down to a level where they're too weak to resist, and where you could easily, if there is a conflict, you can easily just shut a little bit of a tap and completely make them, like we see today, vulnerable and dying. So this is a calculated policy of forced and controlled starvation, which is genocide. I mean, that is genocide. It's not plausible genocide. It is genocide.
By 2017, 40% of households in Gaza were experiencing severe food insecurity, largely as a result of the blockade, and 80% of the population depended on external aid.
نعيش حصارا منذ 11 عاما نعم نعيش بلا كهرباء منذ 11 عاما نعم هناك إغلاق للمعابر مستمرة حتى هذه اللحظة.
If Israel had allegations with respect to crimes being committed by Hamas leaders or Hamas militants, it should have chosen ways of targeting those who are directly responsible, not for ensuring that the entire population of the 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza would bear the crux of the punishment through the siege blockade in Gaza to come out.
Human rights advocates protested every year to change this reality.
فإننا نطالب المجتمع الدولي بتحمل مسؤولياته لضمان فتح منفذ بحري لغزة.
But their voices went unheard. Worse still, hundreds lost their lives during these demonstrations. By 2022, living in Gaza meant being trapped in one of the most densely populated places on Earth. With part-time electricity, no adequate access to clean water, and no proper sewage system.
We have issued a report in 2022 that found that Israel was committing the crimes against humanity of apartheid against Palestinians in Gaza. And for apartheid to exist, you need to have a conception of Palestinians as being second-class citizens, as being subhuman, as being people not worthy of the same rights as others, including Israeli Jewish population. So what's happening now is not completely new.
So, the blockade was already a painful reality long before October 7th. But after that date, everything deteriorated dramatically. Following Hamas's October 7th attacks, Israel declared a total blockade on Gaza.
بدي أحكي شيء واحد، حركة حماس فتحت أبواب جهنم على قطاع غزة. حماس أخذت القرار وحماس راح تتحمل المسؤولية وثمن أعمالها.
אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור.
This was not just the closure of borders. It was the collapse of every aspect of life. Electricity, mostly supplied by Israel, was cut by 90%. This crippled hospitals, shut down sewage systems, and halted desalination plants that provided drinking water.
We've had reports by the World Health Organization and other UN agencies with respect to the widespread diarrhea, as well as other waterborne diseases caused by the sheer lack of sanitation.
The blockade's first 3 months made Gaza's already dire conditions even worse.
مش ملاقين ولا بامبز ولا اكل ولا حليب، يعني ايش ذنبهم هذول الاطفال اللي مشردين مش ملاقين ياكلوا. اليوم بنستنى باكيت البسكوت ولا بطانيه ولا معينا في الخيم هنا.
The Minister of Energy and Infrastructures, Isaac Katz, explained that Israel was blocking fuel from entering Gaza because, and I quote, "This is what should be done to a nation of murderers and butchers of children." Again, everyone is potentially a military target.
In January 2024, Israel blocked 56% of humanitarian aid bound for northern Gaza. By the end of the month, 1 in 4 people, around 576,000, were on the brink of severe mass starvation.
Israel is systematically blocking aid, with the entire world complicit in allowing and enabling this during Ramadan, no less, forcing children and babies to starve and never break their fast. It is using starvation as a weapon of war, and this is not something new. There is widespread documentation of Israel having done this in the past, even at so-called peacetime.
In early March, Gaza's health officials reported that children were dying from malnutrition and dehydration.
ويعني شبه طبيعية، بس مع المجاعة اللي احنا فيها ومع الحصار لأنها انتقائية في الأكل، ما بتفهم إنه هذا الأكل مش موجود، في أكل فيش أكل، ترضاش تأكل، فصار عندها سوء تغذية، يعني فيش الأكل مش متوفر أصلاً للأطفال الطبيعيين يعني، وهي ما بترضى تأكل أي حاجة، فضعفت، صار عندها سوء تغذية حاد، شوف كيف رجليها مثلاً، صدرها، عظمها كله مبين، ما فيش فيها يعني أي شكل من أشكال إنها طفلة طبيعية يعني عادية.
While the blockade pushed Gaza toward famine, its food infrastructure was also targeted. Farmlands and orchards were bombed. Restrictions on humanitarian aid tightened further. Aid deliveries fell to about 100 trucks a day, sometimes fewer, and on some days, none at all. Before the war, that number was 500.
جينا اشترينا ربطة خبز من مخبز العائلات، يعني بقول لك استاذ اللي بيشتغل في المركز في المخبز بقول لك فيش خبز، طب وش كيف بدنا نعيش؟ أقليتها من رغيف خبز، كيف بدنا نعيش احنا؟
جاي انا على المخبز ادور خبز ومش ملاقي خبز، لا انا هيني جاي انا بناتي 3 مش ملاقيين، وفيش ربطة الخبز قاعدين برا ببيعوها ب 30 شيكل ومش قادرين نشتريها، عمال ب 2 شيكل يلا نقدر نشتريها، لو كتيش بدنا نضلنا هيك؟
فيش خبز من مرة عدم، وفيش دقيق في البلد كمان، ومحرومين من جميع سبل الحياة اليومية والدائمة، واحنا بنناشد العالم الإنسان لحل مشكلتنا.
Israeli protesters, including settlers, blocked and attacked aid trucks headed for Gaza. During this period, an extremist far-right group called Saab 9 set up barricades at crossings such as Kerem Shalom and shut them down. The United Nations found that, in the previous year, Israel had arbitrarily blocked 83% of aid destined for Gaza.
نازحين عند سوق فراس قرب المكاب، وبنيجي بنلم وقيد للنار، بنلم كرتون، بنلم اغراض، بنلم بلاستيك، وبنترزق، بنعملنا 20 10 وبنروح الباقي للدار. والله ويعني ما انت زي ما انتم شايفين على هذا الحال.
After the ceasefire took effect in January 2025, Israel eased some restrictions on Gaza, but it was still far from enough. Israel limited the number of Palestinians allowed to leave Gaza for medical treatment abroad. Although the agreement stipulated that 150 Palestinian patients could leave each day, Israel effectively reduced the number to well below 50.
I mean, this is about eliminating an entire people's future. And it's part of a long pattern. I mean, for decades, Israel's controlled Gaza's borders, its economy, its resources. This is just the final stage of an occupation that was never meant to end.
Because Israel largely blocked entry by land and sea, some aid was delivered by air. But even this was often humiliating. Some packages hit Palestinian families' tents, damaging them. Others scattered across the rubble of destroyed buildings and onto roads. Young people and children were forced to collect the spilled food with their bare hands.
حتى الآن نزحنا 7 مرات، احنا بنعاني من قصة الأكل في التكيات، فيش تكيات فاتحة، بنعاني من قصة الطحين، فيش خبز، بنعاني من قصة ربطات الخبز مش متوفرة في السوق، ومعناش مصاري نشتري.
After nearly 2 months of ceasefire, Israel escalated its actions in March. On March 2nd, it announced a halt to all humanitarian aid and commercial shipments to Gaza.
החלטנו בדיון אמש שהחל מהבוקר נמנע כל כניסה של סחורות ואספקה לעזה.
This became the longest continuous period in which aid to Gaza was completely stopped.
ابني كان بحالة جيدة قبل الحرب، كان هيك، والآن ابني هيك بسبب إغلاق المعابر. صار معاه سوء تغذية بسبب إغلاق المعابر. ابني بيعاني من سوء تغذية، سوء امتصاص. ابني عملوا له تحويلة للخارج بسبب إغلاق المعابر، ما فيش له تحويلات.
سبب رئيسي هو إغلاق المعابر. لو المعابر شغالة كان خف الضغط على الناس كلها واقفة عشان ربط الخبز. المعبر أثر علينا الله يفرجها يا رب، يفرج همنا يا رب.
By the blockade's second month, thousands of trucks were stuck at the border awaiting entry. Bakeries were shutting down one after another. People waited in line for hours for just a handful of rice.
وزن بنت الصغار كان 4 كيلو، وصار وزن حاليا 2 كيلو ونص بسبب سوء التغذية. يعني الحليب اللي موفر إلها مخصص، وحاليا يعني العلبة واحدة موفر في البلد. يعني بيعطوها كل رضعة 3 ساعات، فالبنت بتجوع وبدها كمان، فمش قادرين نوفر لها الحليب.
In desperation, Palestinians began looting warehouses and shops. Between April 29th and May 2nd alone, more than 40 looting incidents were reported.
משה סעדה, כשאתה חבר כנסת בפרלמנט הישראלי אומר, אני כן מעוניין להרעיב עזתים, אם אתה מבין את ההשלכות של האמירה הזאת.
אני מסביר לך, הן פשוטות. אני מעוניין להרעיב את העזתים, לעשות מצור על מלא מלא. מי שרוצה לצאת, יצא לאזור הומניטרי שאנחנו ננהל אותו. אנחנו. צה"ל יחלק את המזון, כי מי
תתמודד עם הביקורת מהעולם?
נו באמת, היינו שם, באמת, ביקורת בעולם. עזוב, זה לא רציני, אנחנו צריכים לדאוג ליהודים. הגיע הזמן.
By May, the UN reported that people in Gaza were surviving on just one meal every 2 to 3 days, and more than 66,000 children were suffering from severe malnutrition.
وأنا أتحدث إليك، أحد النساء هنا سقطت على الأرض الآن أمام بوابة مجمع الشفاء الطبي، سقطت على الأرض من شدة المجاعة ومن شدة الجوع. ومن شدة الجوع كما نشاهد الآن يحاول الأهالي التعامل مع هذه السيدة، وهذا ما كنت أتحدث عنه قبل لحظات، أن الناس يسقطون الآن في شوارع غزة من شدة الجوع، يسقطون على الأرض من شدة الجوع. وهذا المصاب الذي أصيب الآن لا يوجد له علاج، وهذا حال المواطنين جميعا هنا في داخل القطاع.
Due to famine, undernourished infants began dying one after another. In just 11 weeks, 57 children died from hunger.
غزة حصار، فيش إشي، يعني فيش مقومات حياة تقوم في الأطفال. في الكبار في سوء تغذية في الأطفال، الكبار. الحصار هذا عامل، يعني الحرب من جهة بتدمرنا ومن جهة الحصار. فيش مقومات حياة، فيش معابر مسكر، اللي بده علاج يطلع، ما فيش علاج في الدنيا. وقفوا هذا الحرب، يمدوا غزة بالمواد الغذائية، يمدوها، يعالجوا الوضع. يعني انتوا ايش بتستنوا؟
The children and women are the weak and vulnerable belly of the Palestinian population, and they are the vast majority of the casualties of every attack Israel has conducted against the Palestinians all through the history of occupation. They target and kill the weakest people in the Palestinian society to weaken and inject guilt in those who dare to challenge, who dare to resist.
After international pressure, on May 20th, Israel ended the 11-week blockade and allowed aid into Gaza. But according to the UN, it was only a drop in the ocean.
Palestinians in Gaza are enduring what may be the cruelest phase of this cruel conflict.
This video is to celebrate that finally, after 5 months, I have an apple. The story behind this apple is too long, and you cannot imagine that you need all of this process only to get one apple. This apple is not even from Gaza, from Palestine. You see that the Israeli army is blocking everything from entering to Gaza and preventing the people to plant or to reach their farms.
Upon hearing the news, Palestinians rushed to aid distribution points, causing stampedes in many locations. On June 1st, at an aid distribution center in southern Gaza, desperate civilians came under attack. More than 40 Palestinians were killed.
هذا شاب استشهد من عند الحين ولا حد دور عليه ولا حد حمله الا الزلمه الطيب هذا وانا وكمان شويه شباب. الناس همها قد الحين بيسيبوا الناس تموت. قد اغلى حاجه صار
يا عمي هذه كمان الحين هذا كمين
عندي دبابه الحين يعني استشهد بالضبط عندي مقطوره عندي دبابه
جايبين اليهود طحين كمين للناس يقتلوهم.
هاي نصيبنا نروح في شهيد.
These scenes are from an aid distribution point in Netzarim, where thousands of people trampled over one another for a single bag of rice. On June 16th, another 38 Palestinians were killed while trying to collect aid.
ورحت هجمت عشان جوعانين مشتاقين ناكل. هجمت على الخطر بس عشان ادبر اكل لاولادي وطحين لاولادي. بس لما فتت لجوا صح كانت خطر بس الحمد لله اخذت الاشي وطلعت الحمد لله طلعت بصعوبه الحمد لله وصار طخطخوا علينا. رمينا نص وجبنا نص ما عشبناش لحتى الان ضلنا هذاك لكن جوعنا مت من الجوع.
Footage recorded by a local journalist shows dozens of civilians being shot as they sought aid, and an aid truck completely destroyed. Footage from June 29th shows an Israeli drone targeting a Palestinian man carrying a sack of flour on his back.
بناء تعليمات الجيش لتلقي المساعدات الإنسانية من منطقة العلم في رفح. توجهت أنا والشباب الساعة 6 صباحا لمنطقة العلم لتلقي المساعدة الإنسانية. وصلنا منطقة العلم تم إطلاق النار علينا بشكل مباشر من الدبابات الإسرائيلية. أصبت أنا وأصبت صوب وكان في ناس كثيرة متصابة شهداء وما دخلناش نجيب المساعدات لأنه تصابنا ونقلنا على المستشفى.
In the Zikim area of northern Gaza, civilians came under fire. A child was killed in his father's arms while waiting for aid. Anyone who raised their head risked being shot. People faced an impossible choice: die of hunger or be killed while searching for food. They were killed by Israel while trying to get a single kilo of flour to survive.
There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza. We enable humanitarian aid throughout the duration of the war to enter Gaza, otherwise there would be no Gazans.
زي ما قالوا لنا توجهوا على نقطة تسليم المساعدات، خشينا ملايين. خشيت أول ما مسكت الكرتون ما عرفت أطلع فيها، مليون بني آدم فوقية، مليون يعني كيف بدي أطلع؟ ولا بحاجة طلعت، هاي غير البهدلة اللي طلعت غير هيك ما طلعتي. رايح بدي أشوف علبة جبنة لو عارف، هذا هي علبة هدف، أي حاجة، ما فيش ولا حاجة.
Most of the deaths had occurred at GHF aid distribution points. In February 2025, Israel and the United States established the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, to distribute humanitarian aid in Gaza. However, no international organization, including the UN, recognized the initiative. For them, it was nothing more than weaponizing aid. The testimony of a former GHF employee supports this view.
It's what I call the survival games, or survival of the fittest, or the Hunger Games.
U.S. Army Special Forces officer Anthony Aguilar was serving with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. But what he witnessed while on duty at an aid distribution point shook him deeply.
This little boy, his name is Amir, and he was standing, he was with the crowd, but he walks over, he reaches out and he holds my hand and he kisses my hand. He kisses my hand and he says, "Shukran." And he walked back to the group, and then he was shot at with pepper spray and tear gas and stun grenades and bullets shot at his feet and in the air, and he runs away scared. Amir walked 12 kilometers to get food, got nothing but scraps, thanked us for it, and died. That's what we're doing.
Following the incident, Aguilar resigned from his post.
It is 100% by design to dehumanize the civilian population and to give the appearance to the outside that they are animals, they are cattle.
From the start of GHF operations on May 27th until August, at least 1,487 people were killed and over 10,000 injured.
Given the killings that we have seen at the GHF aid sites, how will you guarantee that that kind of disaster will not happen when you have 1 million more people displaced? Thank you.
Well, Hamas created this problem. I don't know of a country that texts millions of messages to civilians to get out of harm's way, giving up the element of surprise or calling them individually on cell phones. Yet Israel is accused of genocide. It's absurd. Or starvation policy. But there was a problem of deprivation, no question about it.
Israel also targeted international aid shipments. In May, the ship Conscience was attacked by a drone in the international waters. In June, the Madeleine, carrying aid to break the blockade and famine, set sail from Sicily, but on June 9th, it was intercepted and seized by Israeli forces in international waters. In July, the Hanzala set out, only to be blocked in the same way.
די, נגמר, שום משא ומתן, שום איזושהי תקווה למשא ומתן, להיכנס בכל הכוח, בעצימות מלאה, מלא מלא, להתחיל, לצערי, מצליחים להם עכשיו סיוע הומניטרי, זו טעות מאוד מאוד גדולה, אבל להתחיל לכבוש שטח, אחרי שגם את התוחמת הצפונית, גם עוד שטחים, לעצר את הצעדים, מלחמה עד הסוף.
Article 6 of the Rome Statute defines deliberately inflicting living conditions intended to destroy a group as genocide. Article 7 lists the obstruction of humanitarian aid and medical resources as a crime against humanity. Under international law, a naval blockade is considered an act of aggression, while the Fourth Geneva Convention obliges an occupying power to provide food and medical care to the population.
Collective punishment is a violation of the Geneva Conventions, particularly the Fourth Geneva Convention, and it can also amount to a war crime as well.
It is the tool through which, the weapon through which Israeli militaries are making Gaza unlivable for Palestinians, and it is through hunger and the absence of drinkable water that they are creating conditions of life that are meant to destroy Palestinians in Gaza.
Since October 7th, 2023, Israel has sent approximately 68,000 aid trucks to Gaza. But the real need is far greater. Gaza's minimum daily requirement is 500 trucks, meaning that by now more than 300,000 should have entered. In other words, only about 22% of the minimum required aid has reached Gaza. This means the aid that has arrived is 1/5 of what is needed.
I think it affects the world view, the Palestinian view of the world, their prospect, how they see themselves, how they see others, and how they see the future. We have to remember that colonial trauma is not accidental, it is deliberate, and it is made with a purpose. The purpose is to break the conviction of the oppressed and occupied people.
Today in Gaza, the markets that once sustained daily life are either bombed out or deserted. Grocery stores are gone, and those that remain have empty shelves and sky-high prices. Civilians survive on scraps, animal feed, or whatever still grows in their gardens. Many children now survive on scraps or go for days without adequate nutrition, while hospitals report severe shortages in therapeutic feeding supplies. This ongoing deprivation is creating a generation marked by trauma, hunger, and irreversible health problems.
You know, if you're malnourished as a baby and as a child, I mean, that affects your whole development. Your mental development, your physical development, you know, as a person. That has to have an effect on millions of people in Gaza. The whole young generation. You know, the trauma of the war, the trauma of, you know, seeing your family members killed, you know, the trauma of being injured yourself, and then the effects of being malnourished, and not having health care, and maybe getting diseases that, you know, remain with you for the rest of your life. I mean, in so many ways, this is going to have a major impact on generations of Palestinians.
حرام عليكم، وين عروبتكم؟ وين وحدتكم؟ وين دينكم؟ اتقوا الله فينا يا جماعة الخير. احنا قاعدين بنذبح من الوريد إلى الوريد في قطاع غزة. احنا بنعاني الأمرين في قطاع غزة. لا احنا لاقيين خبز ولا لاقيين أكل ولا لاقيين شرب ولا لاقيين مية ولا لاقيين حاجة. حرام عليكم، الحشرات في الليل أكلتنا، الأمراض تفشت فينا. يعني مش عارف أنا إيش أوصف لك. يعني أنا عيب علي أحكي وأوصل هالرسالة بعد سنتين وأنتم مش حاسين فينا.
جاي السوق شاب ياكل انت ونروح نجيب مساعدات كل يوم 70-80 شهيد، ونروح عشان نجيب لقمة العيش اليوم 70 شهيد عند المساعدات. كيف بدنا نعيش؟ وبنطلع على داره في الشرقية بدنا نجيب كيس طحين وموت في حضنه، مات في حضنه كيس الطحين يا عالم. وين الرحمة؟ وين الإنسانية؟ وين الدين؟ وين العبادة؟ وين المسلمين؟ والناس ما يعيطلهمش نفتش علينا. الله ارحمونا برحمته يا الله ارحمونا، أقسم بالله بستنى الموت كل دقيقة.
People in Gaza, when they express their emotions, they most commonly talk about the feeling of abandonment, the feeling of betrayal, the harm becoming upon people in Gaza. So that's the most common feeling. And I think this will go from one generation to another. It's so shocking that people in Gaza are left alone and the world has failed to keep its promises for international law and human rights and could not prevent a televised genocide from going on and on.